You know, I didn't have a speaker for this year, and I thought, wow, after I heard him, I've seen 2016 a couple of times, seen his new movie, America, Imagine a World Without It. If you haven't seen it, you have got to see it. Maybe a few more of his books out there, maybe he'll sign that for you. But such a blessing. And you saw 2016, you know, we have a guy who came from India as a child, same age as a young man who did early growing up in Indonesia. Same age, came about the same time, and one sees that we've been mean, and we've been imperialistic, and the best thing America could do is pull back in and let the world run its course without us. And the other sees America's greatness and understands where it comes from. And so, the treat for tonight, a man who is now my very good friend, and I love him to death. Would you give a good East Texas welcome to Dinesh D'Souza?
Louie, thank you. Thank you very much. I've never been to Tyler, Texas. And until a week ago, I'd never met Louie Gohmert. I knew about him, but I didn't actually know him at all. And yet, as we shared a podium together in Midland, within about 5 minutes, I felt a very strange feeling come over me. I realized that I'd grown up in a completely different part of the world, thousands of miles away in a remote outskirt of Mumbai, India. And Louie Gohmert had been raised in a completely different way, with barbecue, right here. And yet I realized that ideologically, we were of one soul. We felt exactly the same way. Our instincts were identical. And I found myself warming to the jokes he told and kicking back. And I even chuckled a minute ago when someone said that he's a man of no intelligence. Because I've spent most of my life in America dealing with people who are educated beyond their intelligence. You know, in the mid-'80s when he was president, Reagan went back to his alma mater, Eureka College. And there was a bunch of journalists there. He was giving the convocation speech. And one of them, to embarrass him, said, "Mr. President, isn't it true that you graduated from Eureka College, not exactly Harvard, with the C average?" Reagan said, "Yeah." He said, "You know, even now I wonder what I might have accomplished if I studied hard." The guy who's president of the United States. Actually, I became interested in politics because of Reagan. And my favorite Reagan story has to do with when he was governor of California. This was in the 1960s. It was the era of the anti-war movement and the hippies. And these guys would surround Reagan's gubernatorial limousine. And one time they all held up signs saying, "We are the future." And Reagan, he scribbled his response on a piece of paper and he held it to the window and it said, "I'll sell my bonds." Now, we're here in a very interesting moment in our nation's history because I believe for the first time we have actually wants and intends to diminish America's influence in the world, who actually seeks a smaller American dream, and who pits his ideology directly against the spirit of 1776, which is the spirit of entrepreneurship and of Christianity that built this country. The greatest mistake with regard to Obama is to see him merely as some kind of a bungler, as some kind of a, there was a book a couple of years ago titled The Amateur. And I know it's often said about Obama that he doesn't know what's going on, he doesn't understand business, and he can't read except if he has a teleprompter. But Obama's actually not a bungler. Jimmy Carter, on the other hand, was a bungler. And I want to argue that he still holds the title. If you think back to the late 1970s, I came to this country at the age of 17 in 1978. You remember in 1979, the hostage crisis. Well, Jimmy Carter didn't want to support the Shah of Iran because he thought he was a dictator. So he pulled the Persian rug out from under the Shah, and whoops, he got Khomeini. Now, that's called presidential nincompoopery. You basically try to get rid of the bad guy, and you get the worst guy. That's not so bright, but at least no one would think that Carter wanted Khomeini. By contrast, when Obama withdrew American support for our ally Mubarak in Egypt, and we got the Muslim Brotherhood, the largest organization of radical Islam in the world, you never got the idea that Obama was like, oh no, what have I done? He actually seemed very serenely thrilled. In fact, when the Muslim Brotherhood was pushed out and the Egyptian military took power, Obama threatened to cut off US aid. So with Obama, you have somebody who has an ideology that sees America as the bad guy. Now, in my earlier film, 2016, I focused just on Obama. And quite frankly, looking back on that, that was kind of a horror film, 2016. But in the new film called America, I decided it's very important to widen the focus. Why? Because when Obama said in his inaugural speech that he was going to remake America, very interesting phrase, remake America. So you know, I thought, how do you remake something? How do you remake a bridge? Well, you remake a bridge by taking down the old bridge. So you can't remake America without taking down the America that's here now. Obama is no amateur in doing that. He's actually been unbelievably effective. He's the most effective president since Reagan. The reason we misunderstand him is we judge him by our standard. And by our standard, he's obviously a massive failure. But by his standard, he's doing really well. But even Obama knows that he can't remake America by himself. He actually needs a team to do it. He needs a whole movement, the progressive movement, so-called. Now, far from Obama creating that movement, the movement has created him. And this movement has been developing since the late 1960s. And it's realized that you have to fight on a very wide battleground. You cannot just fight in politics. In fact, this is something that the Republicans, the RNC, for example, the Republican National Committee, the Republicans go into a huddle, they go, okay, how do we take back the Senate? Really important to take back the Senate, by the way. Well, who do we field in 2016? Very important question. But while the Republicans are focused just on that, the left has been doing the long march through the institutions. Colleges, universities, elementary and secondary schools, the media, the mainline churches, Broadway, Hollywood, entertainment, comedy. So, the left ultimately is able to move the goalposts of the culture. So that when a political issue comes up, gay marriage comes up for debate, we may as well not even debate it. Why? Because for 15 years, the left has been slowly changing people's assumptions. So that by the time the vote comes up, it's almost, you may as well not even have it. The culture has already moved. You've been left behind. So, the progressive movement, in other words, is powerful not just in politics, but also in the culture. One reason I'm thrilled to be here on behalf of Louie Gohmert is he represents the kind of American spirit and fortitude and good sense, but also practicality that's very much needed today, particularly for a party like, for a team like ours, that's on the defensive. Right now, our team is the weaker team. We're weaker in resources, where we only have one half of one branch of government. Sometimes we feel like, how come our guys are such wimps? Well, one reason they're wimps is they're weak. They'll be stronger if they have the Senate, then they can throw more block and tackle on Obama. And it's true, there are lots of opportunists on both sides. You always know you're winning in politics when the opportunists are coming over to your side. So, the point is, our side needs to have a strategy for how to move the goalposts in the other direction. And that requires being clever about politics, but it also requires recognizing that if we don't make a difference in education, if you don't make a difference in media, if you don't make a difference in Hollywood, our cause is going to be very difficult to sustain over the long term. We're losing young people in droves. Another point I want to make, and this is where Congressman Gohmert is so good, is that the left always claims the high ground of morality. Their key principle is justice. Notice that Obama, he always talks about the fair share. He always talks about social justice. Justice is a very big principle, especially for young people. It's a very powerful idea, and it's a very powerful human principle. I mean, our blood boils when we see injustice, right? If I brought a little dog up to the stage and began to stomp on it, a tremendous revulsion would go through the room. Might be a little different if it was a cat. We won't talk about that. The point I want to make is that people respond instinctively, young people do too, to injustice. And that's why the left has tried to grab that principle. Sometimes as conservatives we have a rival principle, freedom. Freedom, liberty. But actually liberty, freedom, does not trump justice. In fact, freedom is the king, and justice is the ace. We play the king, freedom. They play the ace, justice. They win. One of the things we need to do is to contest the left on the issue of justice. That's what I try to do a little bit my own way in the American film. And one of the things that I'm excited to plan now is ways to take that movie. By the way, it's kind of cool, that movie just yesterday surpassed Michael Moore's film called Capitalism to Become... It's the 6th most successful political film that's been made. So it's kind of cool. Now Michael Moore, to be honest, of the top 10 films, he has 4. He has 4 films, but out of about 20 tries. We have 2 out of 2 tries. We'll get it. The goal of the progressives is actually an unbelievably brash one. They allege that the wealth of America is based on theft, and it's the right of the government to come and seize your wealth and my wealth, because that wealth is stolen goods. Stolen goods. They're not claiming that the government is taking your stuff. They're claiming that it's not your stuff in the first place. And they have an elaborate historical and contemporary argument to prove it. In effect, what they're saying is that the stuff that's in your house, your TV, your couch, your savings accounts, your kids' college fund, that's sort of like Nazi stolen art. It belongs to somebody else. They have every right to take it back if they want. Now you can say, wait a minute, well, I didn't steal it. I kind of inherited it. But that doesn't really matter, because if the art is stolen, even if it was stolen by your ancestors and then given to you, if it actually belongs to somebody else, you have to give it back. And that explains some of the aggression with which this administration and its allies goes after the wealth creators. Now sometimes people say, well, what's really behind all this? Why are they doing this? What are they trying to accomplish? I mean, if you bring America down, how are they better off? Why would somebody intend or attempt to do that? Now, I think that the reason we are puzzled by the other side is that we tend to believe that they are good guys who are merely misguided. They don't believe that of us, by the way. If you listen to the left, their description of us goes something like this: selfish, greedy, materialistic, racist, homophobe, warmonger, and the list goes on. They're attacks on our motives. If you listen to our side, by and large, we say things like, well, I think they're really well-intentioned on the other side, their policies just don't work. Really well-intentioned. Now, this is a marvelous display of Christian charity, and would be very admirable if it were in fact true. But in fact, the left is not motivated that way at all. And I just want to take a minute, because I think it's difficult to fight an opponent without at least some understanding of what's driving them. What's actually driving them, I believe, is a deep clash in our society between two groups of people. On the one hand, the entrepreneur, the wealth creator. And on the other hand, a triangular alliance of journalists, academicians, and community organizers or politicians. These are two very different groups of people. The wealth creators make new things. They get stuff out of the ground. They invent the iPhone. By the way, that's not a response to consumer demand. There was no demand. The iPhone was created first. Then we realized we needed it. We couldn't live without it. Now that's called the supply side. You supply a product before the demand is even there. That takes a certain kind of, if I can use the word, intelligence. Barack Obama has no such intelligence. You think he could invent the iPhone? He can't even put up a website. Well, but that doesn't mean he's unintelligent. He actually is very talented in other ways. He's very talented in working up the mob. He's a master of mobilizing and directing and channeling envy and resentment. He's not a community organizer, he's a resentment organizer. Now here we are burrowing down to the bottom line motives of what is driving American politics today. So imagine a guy who's working at some kind of mundane job, making accounts, cleaning office floors for a living, and this guy's struggling in America. His house is a little underwater. He's got some credit card bills he has to pay. And he leaves his office and he's walking Tyler, Texas, or Dallas, or Minneapolis, it doesn't matter. And as he's going home, he sees a glass door of a restaurant. He looks inside. He sees all these people inside laughing, ordering $35 entrees. Wine is flowing. There are a couple of limousines pulling in and out. And this guy thinks, what the heck? Why do those people have it so good? Why am I struggling? Yeah, they work hard, but I work hard. And now crucial moment, what begins to kick in is a very powerful human emotion. The most secretive, though powerful emotion that humans have, envy. Envy. Now, envy is not the feeling, gee, that guy's doing really well, I should work harder. That guy started a business, maybe I should think of a business, maybe I should go back to school, maybe I should improve my skills. That's not envy. That's emulating success. That's a good thing. Envy is when you say, well, gee, you know, I'd like to pull myself up, but if I can't, I would love to see that guy pulled down. That's envy. And envy is so despicable an emotion that people don't even like to admit it to themselves. Envy, by the way, is not the same thing as jealousy. Jealousy actually has a certain kind of nobility. Jealousy is often confused with envy because both involve a certain kind of coveting. But jealousy means being deprived of something that is yours. Envy is wanting something that's not yours, to which you have no right. Othello, in Shakespeare's play, is jealous. He believes his wife is cheating on him. He's mistaken. But if he were right, he would have a right to be angry, because it is his wife. Iago, the villain, is envious, because he wants something that's not his. In fact, he doesn't like the fact that other people have anything. Iago says of Cassio, he had a daily beauty in his life that makes me ugly. The very beauty of somebody else, even though it doesn't diminish him at all, makes him, in his view, ugly. So this is the operating emotion of modern liberalism, envy. Envy goes hand in hand with resentment. I'm envious, so I hate the other guy who makes me feel envious of him. Envy, hatred, and then a very third and surprising emotion, self-hatred. Self-hatred. Now, why self-hatred? Actually, in older times, envy never led to self-hatred. Because in older times, your position in life was largely given by luck. So let's say you live in the Middle Ages and you were a serf. It's a time of feudalism. And you see these aristocrats and the marquis and the count, and they're all better off than you are, but it doesn't give you low self-esteem because you know it's pure luck. You were just born a serf. You got the short end of the stick. And that guy, he doesn't deserve any credit because he was born a count. He got the long end of the stick. But see, in today's society, if you see someone who's doing better than you are, particularly if anybody can go out and start a business, if anybody can go out and drill for oil, if anybody can turn sand into silicon and make the iPhone, and that guy did it, and you didn't, wow. Then the thought begins to cross your mind that you suck. So suddenly, envy and hatred turns to self-hatred. I'm no good. And who should come along at that very important moment but Obama? Who says to this guy who's smoldering in his own resentful juices, and Obama goes, listen, you're not envious. You're righteously indignant. You see that guy in that restaurant? You don't need to feel envious of him. You're not. He has actually been stealing from you. His wealth is at your expense. But here's the good news. All you have to do is vote for me. I will then take the cops and go and take his stuff, and I will give some of it to you. This is the modus operandi of American politics in the 21st century. Now, it is our job to stop it. And we need to stop it because ultimately, what Obama and the progressives are doing is waging war against the wealth creators. They're also, by the way, waging a more secretive war against Christianity. So they're attacking both the core principles of America. And if we don't stop them, no one will. Amazingly, the guy who you think should stop them, the entrepreneur himself, is actually the worst least equipped guy for this fight at all. Most entrepreneurs are running their own business. If you ask them to make the moral case for capitalism, they wouldn't even know where to begin. When Obama comes and attacks them, the best they can do is say things like, well, gee, I'm giving back to the community. To which, of course, the thought, according to everybody, is, how long have you been taking from the community? In other words, the very concept of giving back implies a kind of moral surrender, as if capitalism is some form of acknowledged theft. Now, the good news is our opponents, although they seem so powerful and so well established, the truth of it is, if you look closely, there are not that many of them. There are not that many of them. Some months ago, I was debating, I did a debate at Dartmouth with the former domestic terrorist Bill Ayers. I have a habit of hanging out with some unusual people. A few weeks later, I sort of delivered him to Megyn Kelly for what turned out to be a very relentless Megyn Kelly interview with Bill Ayers. But while talking to Bill Ayers, I asked him, I said, you know, you guys, you left this in the 60s. You started this group called SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. And you were able to change the values and mores, even the physical appearance of a whole generation. So you were at the University of Michigan with, let's say, 30,000 students. Well, how many were in your group at the peak? And he goes, well, at the peak, we had about 300. He goes, but we were a very determined group. He goes, we would go to the president's office. I know we have a college president in the room, so he'll know the discomfort of this feeling, but he goes, yeah, we would kick over his waste paper basket, turn over his desk, give him 100 non-negotiable demands, refuse to leave until he agreed to every single one of them, and the cops would show up, we'd all go limp, they'd come to drag us out, the media would be waiting to take our pictures. So, not very many of them, but very committed to their cause, very determined, very creative, and willing to take a lot of risk. Now, we need to match the other side in commitment, intelligence, and the recognition of the wide, full battlefield. Not just politics, but also culture. I've totally shifted my career in the last 5 years. I used to be, you know, a think tank guy. Kind of a nice job. You're sort of like a university without students. In which you're paid to think. Now, but what I realized is that even though I was writing successful books, I mean, my current book, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list for the 4th week now. It's kind of cool. I think I'm probably more excited about crushing Hillary's book. But, nevertheless, a book like that will reach 200,000 people. The movie 2016, by contrast, has been seen by 8 million people. So, now what this means is that movies are a way to take our message abroad in a way that talk radio, the Heritage Foundation, the National Review, even the Fox News Channel doesn't reach. It reaches some new people. We have to build bigger megaphones. And then we need to take people like Louie Gohmert and give them a national voice through those megaphones. So we're creating the new leadership that we lack now. A few weeks ago, the powers that be at Costco decided it was not a very good idea to have my book in Costco. And so they issued an order to pull all copies of my book, America, from Costco. I only mention this because of what happened after that, which is, in the space of 48 hours, 17,000 people went either physically to Costco or on the Costco website, and in 48 hours, destroyed the website. Which means that, I don't mean that they trashed the website, I just mean that they commented on it so that if you went to the Costco website to buy, oh, a barbecue grill or a pair of pants, you would see the word censorship appearing every 3 seconds. And you would see people cutting up their Costco card and taking selfies of themselves walking into Sam's Club to look for my book. Now, this is very bad for a company that does a lot of business online. Costco shut down its online business completely. They shut down the site. And the CEO had me up to Seattle to meet with him. And the man was virtually in tears. He goes, "You're destroying the company." And I said, look, I'm an immigrant. I wrote a book celebrating America, called America, and you decided to pull it on the 4th of July. That doesn't look that good. But I said, I didn't do anything. It's your own customers who are revolting. And he said, look, he goes, Dinesh, for the past week, because it had been several days since I met him, he goes, I have done nothing more than respond personally to thousands of letters and emails. Well, why am I telling you this? Because it shows you that the ordinary citizen, the ordinary patriot, has enormous power in these days of social media. If this had happened 10 years ago, you'd have to write Costco a letter, to which would be safely tossed out, and that would be the end of the matter. Today, can't do it. Today, a group like this, in this room, is actually really powerful. You're just not using your power. You're using about 1% of it. But there's a huge amount of concentrated, kinetic force. Some of it is economic, but some of it is organizational, some of it is social media, and some of it is just getting on the phone and chatting with your friends. And some of it is just thinking about how do we thwart the other side in areas where it is strong. You know, we don't fight them where they're strong. One reason I like going to Hollywood is their monopoly. They think they own it. So we want to go there and stick a big patriotic flag right in the middle of Hollywood. Fighting in their mouth. In the next year, we'll take this America film. We want to screen it on campuses around the country, send copies of it to high schools. Because the left, in this sense, is relentless. Every time I do social media, I do a tweet. Within seconds, 10 leftists will come on my Twitter and will abuse the heck out of me. Now, these guys are paid. They're little 20-somethings all over the country, and they live to trash conservatives on social media. Our guys don't even think like this. And if you wonder why some of our good guys go running from the field, it's because they can't take this. They don't like it. I'm strange. I don't know, I must have gotten a weird sort of DNA, either at Dartmouth or from my mom, because when I see all this stuff, I'm actually super excited. Because I feel, if all these guys are trashing me every day, I must be really effective. So keep it coming. I enjoy it. And Louie Gohmert, I see that in him. And by that I mean that quiet confidence in what he believes in is embedded in his breast. He knows what's right, and at the bottom of it, it's that Reaganite confidence. And it's not a boastful confidence at all. I remember when Reagan was governor of California, there was a very influential columnist. Well, they didn't have the New York Times, they had the LA Times. And his name was Herb Cain. He'd write for the San Francisco Chronicle and the LA Times. And he would savage Reagan every week. And finally, Mike Beaver, who worked for Reagan, would say, "Come to Reagan now. Have you seen these vituperative attacks by Herb Cain?" And this is Reagan's response, very eye-opening. Reagan goes, "Yeah," he goes, "You know, what's eating that guy? What's eating that guy?" Now, let's think about this. It never crosses Reagan's mind for a second that there is any merit in what Herb Cain is saying. Reagan is fully confident that his view is right, and the other guy is a fool. I think you know I'm not talking about the fact that we shouldn't listen to the other side, we shouldn't intelligently engage, but I think deep down, your Congressman Louie Gohmert, in his heart, knows what's right and won't be shaken from that path. This is not to say that you don't find middle ground. But the key to middle ground is to recognize that when you look for middle ground, you do as much good under the circumstances as you can possibly achieve. And that is the job of statesmanship. The American founders, when people say, they were hypocrites, they said all men are created equal, but they had slaves. They allowed slavery to continue. Well, what were they actually expected to do? They're meeting in Philadelphia. There are 13 states. Slavery is legal in every single one of them. So the founders could say, well, you know what? We're gonna have a union without slavery. How many of those 13 states would have joined such a union? And if they didn't, then you wouldn't have a single country. You'd probably have multiple countries. Slavery could easily have continued much longer. Here's my point. How can you attack people for not doing something that they were not in a position to do? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Well, we're in a big fight, as you know. The good news is that I think, and Louie mentioned this toward the end, the sleeping giant of America is starting to wake up a little bit. Remember that Obama had a lot of special factors going in here. One reason the press is so pro-Obama, I mean, this guy's been having a 6-year honeymoon. Why? Not because he's a liberal, not because he's a Democrat. The press was pretty tough on Carter and Clinton. It's that deep down, most people in our media do not want our first African-American president to fail. That's it. So as a result, they will cover for him. If you give them bad news, they won't report it. If I walk into the New York Times tomorrow and give them information that would cause Obama to resign tomorrow, I have the full confidence it will not appear in tomorrow morning's paper. They'll get rid of it. So we're in a strange moment in our politics. And America is slow to wake up. Look at World War II. A lot had to happen before America said enough. But that enough moment, I think, is coming upon us. When I was in college, I had a professor who once told me about the story of the lion tamer and the lion. And he said this is a really remarkable sight. Here's the lion tamer, who's a little guy with a little stick. And he just prances around, he does his little stick, and the lion immediately moves to the lion tamer's machinations. And the professor said, why is the lion doing that? Who's actually more powerful, the lion or the lion tamer? The lion. But the lion doesn't know that. So that's the problem right now with America. We feel like Obama's doing all this to us. Oh, we're at the receiving end. We're not at the receiving end. He serves at our behest. If we wake up, he's doomed. He knows that. He has all kinds of scams to keep us in our place. But ultimately, we're the lion, and he's the lion tamer. So I'm thrilled to be here. You've got a great congressman who knows how to fight and is ready to do it. I think we're in a moment of creating new leadership for the Republican Party and for this country. And as we do that, it will be us ultimately. Not Reagan. Wish we had it, but we don't. Fortunately, we have us, and if we come together and we fight intelligently, ultimately we will not merely endure, we will also prevail. Thank you very much.